If you've gotten to the place where you're asking, is my relationship worth saving? It's usually because you're in one of three painful places. One, you're tired of begging for what feels like the bare minimum. You couldn't set the bar any lower and they still act like you're asking too much. You're tired of holding everything all together by yourself. And you don't want to leave if there's potential of this working, but you're exhausted from the fighting. You're tired of being dismissed and carrying the emotional weight meant for two people to carry, and you're tired of feeling alone. You've asked them to read a book, you've asked them to watch videos like this, and they act like it's a waste of their time. And hope is turning into resentment. Or two, trust has been shattered in some way, by cheating or lies or some other betrayal, and you're just not sure if you're ever going to feel safe with them again. And you're looking up at this mountain of healing that needs to take place, and even though there's a part of you that loves them and wants this to heal, there's another part that's paralyzed by the fear of what if I put in all this work and climb up this mountain and it doesn't get better, or they just hurt me again. Or three, you don't resent them, there hasn't been a big betrayal, you've just drifted apart for years, and the connection and intimacy dried up a long time ago, and you just feel like roommates, right? And you're just tired of feeling so distant. You want more out of an intimate partnership, right? You don't know if this is just a season that you can recover from, or if maybe you should just move on. So if you resonate with any of those, first, I just want to say, I'm so sorry, because I know that's a really painful place. And you're just trying to do everything you can to see if you can make this work, and you deserve credit for that. Be sure you're giving yourself credit for that. Give yourself grace and compassion, especially during this difficult season. Here's what I know. Just by you asking the question, I know there's at least a part of you that wants this relationship to work, or else you would have already left, right? You don't want to feel like you gave up too early. You don't want to make the wrong choice. You're afraid of what life would look like if you left, but let's be honest. You're also scared of what life would look like if you stayed and nothing changed. And I have no illusions. It's true. Relationships are hard, right? It'll be hard if you leave. It'll probably be hard if you stay. All relationships require work. And you deserve someone who wants to put in the work with you. You deserve someone who not just says, I love you, but actually loves you through actions. Because real love is considerate and thoughtful. It's not selfish. Love wants you to feel valued and prioritized in this relationship. Love serves and sacrifices. It builds up. It never tears down. Love doesn't demean or belittle, because love honors and respects you, right? Love is curious enough to ask, how can I love you in a way that you feel it most? Love can have hard conversations and still maintain kindness and respect. And love takes accountability when we mess up. What we have to be careful of is staying in unhealthy or unfulfilling relationships because of how much time and energy and love we've already put into that relationship. And we feel like if we left, that we'd be wasting it, right? But here's the truth. Just because you invest in something or someone doesn't mean you're guaranteed a return, right? That's true with the stock market and with relationships. Some stocks are only headed towards bankruptcy. And it's the same for relationships. Doesn't matter how much effort you put in. Some relationships are only headed towards failure because you're the only one that's actually concerned with success. And to make all this even more complicated, a lot of times there's kids involved, right? And you feel guilty about how changing the family dynamic could affect them. And I want a family to stay together as much as possible. I'll do anything so that a family stays together, apart from forcing someone to stay in a toxic environment just for the sake of kids. If one person isn't willing to get help, isn't willing to get clean, isn't willing to stop being abusive with their words or body, isn't willing to work towards mutual respect and equality, isn't interested in validation or empathy, staying in that environment doesn't protect the kids. It hurts everyone. I think we can all agree that sometimes it's far more healthy for them to see you set a standard for how you know you deserve to be treated in a relationship, right? What they need modeled isn't complacency or fear or fighting fire with fire. What they need modeled is assertive, healthy boundaries around destructive and unsafe behavior, even with someone we love and care about. And sometimes that means the end of their relationship, and sometimes that just means separation for a time. Either way, you're modeling self-love and self-respect. So let me answer the question. Is my relationship worth saving? Yes. Your relationship is worth saving if you're both willing to self-reflect, put your pride and ego to the side, take accountability, repair the damage that's been caused, and put in consistent effort to rebuild trust and emotional connection and intimacy. Because you can't save this relationship by yourself. I know it would be easier if you could, but it just doesn't work that way. Some things take two people to build, like trust and emotional safety and connection. You can be the most emotionally intelligent, self-aware, growth-oriented person on the planet, but if the other person isn't willing to show up and put in the work to heal their trauma and learn how to communicate and stop behaviors that hurt their partner, that relationship will never thrive. You cannot force someone else to show up. You can't heal them with your love. You can't manipulate them into considering you. Some people are just on their own path. They can only meet you as deep as they've met themselves. Now, does that mean you have to leave? No. There are lots of reasons that people stay. Kids, religious beliefs, financially it's really tough right now. You ultimately have to make that choice. My only point is you won't feel safe or valued or connected if the same patterns of neglect and disrespect and even emotional laziness don't change. And that especially goes if there's been a clear betrayal. If they want to just sweep it under the rug, they have no interest in repairing or rebuilding trust, right? They won't go to counseling. They continue blaming you for their hurtful actions. That is not someone who values this relationship. Because if you're asking, is that relationship worth saving? What relationship? I don't see a partnership there. Do you? I don't see two people trying their best to build something together. I see one person trying to sabotage this relationship through neglect and narcissism, and they aren't interested in changing. Because it's easy for us to all agree that relationships need trust, safety, and intimacy, or else they die, but do they agree with that? Is that their goal? Do you have those in your relationship? Well, no, but we could. Well, of course you could. Any relationship can have those things, but it takes two people willing to put in the work to cultivate those. Do you have two or just one? Well, maybe I could convince them. Well, yeah, but one, now you're back to over-functioning and trying to do someone else's work for them. You're always there, putting your finger in another hole that they've created in the dam, holding back the waters. The best way to convince someone to start doing their work in the relationship is to show them the consequences of not doing it. Stop saving them from the consequences of their own behavior. You know this. Some behaviors lead to connection, right? Others lead to disconnection. This relationship can't work if you're the only one who cares about which one is which. We don't leave until the pain of staying becomes greater than the pain of leaving. This is your moment. You have to tell them, this relationship doesn't work for me. That's the beginning of healing. Let the dam break. And honestly, you have nothing to lose at this point. I'm not saying stand up to bullies. I'm not saying start conversations with unsafe people. I'm not saying set boundaries with people who are violent. If there's any abuse going on, our first priority is safety. Get out and get safe. But what I am saying is in far too many relationships that end, someone didn't feel safe to be themselves for years. Maybe because they spent their whole life putting someone else's needs above their own, that they don't even know who they are, right? Or maybe because the few times that they were vulnerable and honest, they were punished for it. Whatever the reason, that pattern has to stop. So let's drop the excuses. Don't tell me you can't be honest with them because it would just start a fight. They would just take it as an attack, right? They would yell at you or somehow punish your vulnerability with the silent treatment, because you and I both know that's not sustainable long term. And you're constantly trying to figure out how you can reach them. Maybe if you just say the right words, they'll listen, right? But they never do. Some people have no interest or capability to understand you. Some people are committed to misunderstanding you. That's not something you can change. The bad news is your relationship is shattered, and it might end. And that's really sad. The good news is some of our best opportunities for growth and healing and lasting change in our relationships come on the heels of the most painful moments. This is one of those painful moments. But you have a choice here. You can continue suppressing your feelings. You can continue to be pushed around. You can continue to feel taken advantage of. Or you can face your fears of this relationship ending and actually be honest and tell them vulnerably and respectfully, I don't feel safe, valued, or connected in this relationship, and I'm all done fighting. But I do have hope that we can build a great relationship together. But if nothing changes, I do have to take a step back. This is where assertiveness comes into play. We aren't going to ask them, hey, can we talk to someone professionally together? Because it isn't a question anymore. The only way to build a fulfilling relationship is to grieve losing the ones that have no potential for that. So we say, if we're going to continue in this relationship, we have to talk to someone. Now, the good news is one person can change the direction of a relationship. One person can 100% change the dynamic towards healthy. Because when you stop doing certain things, when you stop fighting, right? When you start advocating for your needs and setting healthy boundaries, it changes the dynamic. It can't not. And you're right, sometimes that will make things worse, right? Sometimes that will be the catalyst to them leaving or the relationship ending. That's true. But this is what we have to realize. The relationship, the way it was unsustainable in the first place. We simply can't stay in a relationship where we have to be silent to keep the peace or walk on eggshells. If us being vulnerable about what we need in this relationship to feel safe, valued, and loved causes them to leave, then the only thing holding this relationship up was us abandoning ourselves. And that wasn't a sustainable relationship for us long term, right? Healing this partnership will always require both of you, because there's pain and hurt that needs to be acknowledged and processed. If you're considering leaving, then there's pain there, or at least a minimum longing, right? Where do you think that needs to go? You think that just needs to be suppressed? That's never going to lead to healing. That's not going to lead to trust and intimacy being rebuilt. So what will? Well, that pain and longing needs to be expressed in a vulnerable way, and you need to feel heard and held and validated and understood. And there needs to be consistent change. Now, does that sound hard? Does that sound impossible given their history? Maybe. But that doesn't make it any less necessary if this relationship is going to work. Any other option where you have to stay silent or suppress is just going to lead to you feeling miserable again. And that's not the relationship I want for you. And sure, you can stay in that relationship. You can cohabitate for the sake of the kids. You can end up feeling like business partners or roommates. But that's not the relationship I want for you, and that's not the relationship you want for you. We either both get on the same page, or we need to close this chapter in our story, as sad as that is. Because the truth is, I don't want to save this relationship. This relationship isn't working for you. Why would I want to continue that? No, this relationship has to die, regardless of what option we choose. This relationship has to end. The only question is, are we going to build a better one together? That's one of our first clues. Is my relationship worth saving? Not if only one of us thinks that anything needs to change. Because you don't feel prioritized, right? You don't feel valued. This isn't about one person controlling the other. This isn't about just getting your way. This is simply about love and consideration. If my partner said they don't feel valued, how could I possibly say I love them and not want something to change? Even if that means the end of the relationship and them finding someone else. What we're not going to do is continue feeling like a burden in this relationship. What we can't do is continue ignoring our needs and desires, because I know that road well. I was a chameleon. I was a pleaser. My worth came from whether I could be of service. My value was from whether you liked me. So I conformed. I twisted. I became whoever you needed me to be. I stayed in neglectful relationships because I was terrified to set any healthy boundaries. I was terrified to hold people accountable to their hurtful behaviors. I was terrified to be seen as too needy. I didn't know what I deserved in a relationship, so I didn't push back when someone else tried to set that standard for me. And I believed them when they said I was just too sensitive. And I'm angry at everything that cost me. I'm angry at them neglecting me for sure, but I'm also angry at me for neglecting me, for me not standing up for me hiding behind fear and making excuses for them and not leaving because, honestly, I didn't want them to feel like I was abandoning them. And I know someone else out there is feeling that. You don't want to hurt them. You don't want to feel like you're abandoning them because you know that pain. And it's been your goal ever since you were little to help people feel loved and comfortable and considered. I needed to learn that I deserved those things as well. But it's my job to make sure that I'm advocating for them. You deserve someone who puts the same amount of effort and intentionality into your relationships as you do. You deserve to be spoken to with kindness and respect. You deserve someone who is just as concerned with understanding your feelings as you are with finding the right words so they don't feel attacked. You deserve to feel safe and appreciated, and you never deserve someone to talk down to you or belittle you. And trust me, I want your relationship to work. I want it to be saved. I just don't want you to continue doing the work of two people and call that love, because that's not love. It's self-abandonment, and relationships can't thrive in those environments. You and I both know relationships only work when two people are doing the work, because you don't need me to remind you what happens over time when only one person is carrying all that weight, right? One person is doing all the communication. One person is interested in pursuing connection and closeness. You burn out. You get bitter and resentful. It's time to start listening to your anger. It's trying to communicate that your needs are going unmet. Your boundaries are being walked on. You feel taken for granted because for far too long you felt neglected. Maybe you've even heard them call you too sensitive, right? And you thought, what if they're right? What if I am the problem? What if I could have done a little bit more in this relationship? But isn't it interesting? You're the only one asking those questions. They don't ask if they're the problem. They don't think about what more they could have done in the relationship. It's just you. So the power dynamic, the gaslighting, the neglect, it's all so familiar to us that sometimes we don't even see it anymore. You literally think that you would be abandoning them if you left, when the truth is they've been abandoning you this whole time, and yet we stay. And that's not love, that's a trauma bond. And I think you've survived in your relationships long enough. I want you to thrive. So is this relationship worth saving? Yes. If we're going to create a new standard going forward, a standard of equality and mutual respect and honesty, we need to invite each other to be honest. We need to encourage each other's vulnerability. We need to get to the bottom of why either of us has been scared to be honest before. It's not about blame. It's about what's best for our relationship. We need to create new agreements around conflict, new agreements around communication, right? New agreements around intimacy and emotional safety. We need to be honest about our boundaries and needs. We need to create new habits of connection. How are we going to protect this relationship so we don't end up where we were before? These conversations aren't always easy, but they are necessary. We need to create new agreements around repair and reconnection, because regardless of which scenario you're in, there's repair that needs to take place, right? There's pain and hurt that's probably been suppressed. We have to process that. It's not enough to just change your behavior and think everything is going to be fine. What about all the hurt that behavior caused in the past? What are we going to do about all that hurt? Because it's not just going to go away on its own. When we get into these extremely difficult situations, we don't need to think 6 months into the future, and we don't need to fully dwell in the pain of the past, because that's just overwhelming. We simply need to focus on taking the next right step. What's the next right step for you to take that moves you one step closer to your goal? The relationships that make it find a way to hold space for each other's pain. We need to learn how to take accountability for our side. We both need to learn how to listen and validate and empathize. We need to be sensitive to how the pain in someone else's past has severely impacted the closeness in the present, and try to understand that. And if you're healing from a large betrayal, it's normal for the betrayal to take center stage. That pain and hurt needs more time. And it's still true that relationships that make it long-term eventually hold space for the other person's pain as well. That's a piece that often gets missed. That doesn't justify the betrayal. It's not making excuses for it. It's simply about understanding that in a relationship, both of our pain matters, right? Or else this simply isn't going to work. And of course, that's usually best done with a professional at first because of how deep the betrayal pain is and how fragile the relationship is. Is my relationship worth saving? Yes, if you both want it to work for each other and not just yourself. Yes, if you're willing to put in the work and try something new. Each week, ask them how they're feeling. Practice holding space, practice validation, practice showing up and showing them I'm here and I care. Ask them what are 2 things that you can do this week to help them feel loved and valued. And as long as those don't violate your boundaries, then do them out of love. And ask the same question next week and remember to do the other 2 things that they asked you to without having to be reminded. That's what builds trust. Consistency and love. This has nothing to do with being perfect, right? We're all going to mess up. We're human. Ruptures are inevitable. But repair is a choice. We have to choose repair. We have to choose to take accountability. We have to choose to validate and empathize with how our words or actions impacted our partner if we're going to say we love them. We choose to lead with vulnerability and kindness and respect when we bring up concerns, complaints, or feelings. Why? Because that's what love requires of us. That's what builds trust and connection instead of what breaks it. It's a daily choice. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for safe. I'm asking for mutually respectful. I'm asking for connected. Trust me, you don't need to be perfect to be happy. You just need someone who actually cares enough to put in the effort to help you feel loved and valued. You need someone who listens when you're upset instead of tells you that you're just making a big deal about nothing or ruining their day. You don't need perfect. You just need someone that you can be honest with. You need someone who sees you as someone who deserves respect and has value apart from your performance or people-pleasing. We don't need perfect. We just need to be healing. And healing means I'm no longer going to operate from a place of my own wounding. I'm not going to keep shutting down. I'm not going to take everything as an attack. I'm not going to lead with a whole bunch of criticism or contempt. I'm not going to stay silent but get resentful. I'm not going to detach from my own emotions and dismiss and invalidate you because I can see how much that damages our relationship. Because the truth is we all have wounds and coping mechanisms and maladaptive strategies that we've been using our whole lives to stay safe. But the point is sometimes those end up hurting our partner. Are we willing to take accountability for the unintentional ways that we've hurt each other and learn some new skills? Learn how to communicate with each other again and actually hear their pain and not interpret it as an attack. Learn how to lead with vulnerability instead of passive aggressiveness or blame. Learn how to see the hurt underneath someone's complaint. See the unmet need hidden in the frustration. Learn how to validate someone's feelings without agreeing with them. Learn how to stay grounded during tough discussions. I know that stuff isn't easy, but it's possible, and it changes everything about your relationship. And you might find that this new relationship feels amazing. You might find that you're able to overlook the pain of the past because of the way they're showing up consistently now. You might find you're able to trust them again, and intimacy and connection are being rebuilt, and it feels amazing. Or you might find that this just isn't enough. There's been too much hurt or distance. And even though you feel guilty, even though you can see that they're trying their best, you know in your gut, this just isn't going to work. And that's okay too. It's not about right or wrong. Sometimes it's just about compatibility. Not everyone is compatible. It's actually really refreshing when you can get past the abandonment fear. You get past trying to force this relationship to survive, and you're okay if it ends. If that's actually what moves you to a healthier place where you can find someone else that actually shares your values or needs. Maybe you think relationships need equality and mutual respect and emotional connection, and they just don't really care about those things. Hey, no problem. Great to meet you. Thanks for the good times. I hope you find someone that works for you. It's actually a good thing when those relationships end. Your relationship ending is not a reflection of you as a person. You're not a failure. Don't let shame and judgment get the best of you here. Our relationships are always amazing learning opportunities. So give yourself grace and compassion and just ask, what is this trying to teach me? And sometimes the relationship isn't even toxic. That's why this feels so difficult, because they aren't that bad. They aren't breaking trust. They aren't neglecting you. You just don't feel right in this relationship. You don't need to feel guilty about wanting to be excited about connecting with someone else. As long as you don't have a consistent avoidant tendencies where you leave when things get more connected, then trust your gut. For most of you, your relationship was simply deprived of what it actually needed to survive for a long time. Just like your job needs you to show up and put in the work to get a paycheck, just like plants need sunlight and water to survive, your relationship is no different. It needs certain things in order to stay alive. Far too many people are neglecting their relationships of what they need to live, and then they're blindsided when they die. A lot of the issues we're facing today are because we weren't actually building trust with each other. We didn't have a standard with each other, that we can rely on each other. We have each other's backs, no matter what. You didn't feel emotionally safe with them. That means my pain matters to you. I can bring things up to you in a respectful, vulnerable way, and you listen. You try to understand my perspective. You're capable of validation and empathy. The best way to start building that is by leading with curiosity instead of defensiveness. Tell me more. If it's important to you, it's important to me. You didn't feel a sense of intimacy. You didn't feel close or connected. You didn't feel desired and accepted by them. That's both of our jobs to prioritize and protect. We can't stop asking those questions. We can't put this thing on autopilot and just coast and simply think it's going to work. It won't. We are naturally drifting apart. The stress of life is trying to destroy our connection together, right? Kids, our job, our in-laws, whatever the case may be. Life is stressful. We have to protect and prioritize our connection together, right? Or else we simply will drift apart. That's the natural state. We have to do something. It's an uphill battle. We're fighting against the current. I'm not saying relationships should feel impossible and extremely difficult. I'm just saying that if we aren't prioritizing them, then we're going to drift apart. Great relationships are built. They don't just happen by accident. So choose each other again. Choose to heal. Choose to get some help in the areas where you need help with, because we all need help in some area. Choose to set a new standard for what you know you deserve. And if you're the other partner watching this, it's normal to feel blindsided by all this, but choose to build a new relationship that works for both of you. Because I know when you both get love right, you're going to be more happy. You're going to be more fulfilled. You're going to be less stressed. Choose to build a great relationship that your kids and grandkids actually want to model. You can do this. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next one.